One man was particularly down on his luck. He sat in his chair at the airport with his face in his hands. Suddenly, emotion overwhelmed him. The previous evening, he'd received desolating news. And when he thought back to that phone call, he broke down. Vehement sobs racked his body in the middle of the airport. But he didn't care. He believed no one could understand his anguish. Until one wet nose pushed his hand aside. One pup had a lust for life. Cora was a passionate corgi, all 28 pounds of her. And her owner was exactly the same. Madison Palm knew how to live life to the full. Together, the pair explored and adventured on a regular basis. But this wasn't always their story. She'd only been Madison's baby for a year. You see, Cora had a dark past, one that nobody thought she could overcome. Madison knew what she was getting herself into when she found Cora. There was no way this little dog would bounce back with the past she had. People warned her that dogs with rough pasts battled to be reintegrated. This did cause Madison to question her initial decision, but when she looked at Cora's lovable face, there was no turning back. That was until one man caused Cora's pasts to catch up with her. Even though she was living it up now, this wasn't always the case for Cora. You see, for the first 7 years of her life, Cora lived at a puppy mill. All she was expected to do was bear litter after litter. This can really take a toll on an animal. And Cora was no exception. The countless litters had taken a toll on her, both physically and mentally. Then a miracle happened. Luckily, Cora was rescued from the puppy mill. She was then taken to an animal shelter, but things only got worse for her there. Cora was an older dog. She was nearing her 8th birthday. As far as adoption goes, older dogs don't generally make the cut. People want puppies. That was Cora's whole reason for existing in the first place. And if dogs at shelters aren't adopted, there's only one place for them to go: the other side. Just as Cora was about to be sent to the great beyond, someone noticed her. Madison came across Cora's profile, and it was love at first sight. She knew she had to have this incredible corgi, and luckily, she felt the same way. If it weren't for Madison, Cora's odds weren't looking great. So off to her forever home she went. But that's where things got interesting. Due to Cora's past, she was initially quite a handful. Cora had been nothing more than a business to her previous owner. She'd received absolutely no love or attention. Now that was what she craved. She constantly doted on Madison. She sought attention more than a regular animal would. But Madison knew what she'd signed up for. But Cora's nature was truly amazing, something Madison would see at the airport. Madison soldiered on. Even though Cora was particularly needy, Madison was okay with it. You see, Cora had a lot to offer. Even though she'd endured a tumultuous past, she was different from other rescues. Cora had a ton of love left to give. No one was a threat to this wonderful pup. She trusted everyone she met. Even though this was a redeeming quality, it left Madison feeling a little uneasy. Even though Cora trusted the world, Madison did not. She knew where her poor pup had come from. Even though Cora had forgotten this, Madison never would. Every time Cora ran to a stranger, Madison's heart skipped a beat. She knew there were uncouth folk in the world, and she would never forgive herself if something had to happen to Cora. But one day, Cora made Madison's heart proud. Madison and Cora were off on another adventure. Madison had booked the pair flight tickets to Alaska. They were off to visit her mom for a bit. In the waiting lounge, Madison took Cora's leash off. Then, out of nowhere, Cora took off. Madison watched on as her pup ran for it. But then she saw where her pup was off to, and this left Madison utterly dumbfounded. Cora ran straight to a man in need. He was sitting in the middle of the airport, overwhelmed with sorrow. It was as though Cora knew this. The previous night, the man had lost his dog, and he couldn't handle the news. Cora had picked up on his grief and made a beeline for him. When Madison saw where she'd gone, she was touched. She filmed the entire thing, but had no idea how people would respond to the video. When Cora and Madison returned home, they were met with an overwhelming sight. Tons of news reporters were waiting for them in Idaho. Madison's shared video had gone viral. Now newsrooms were anxious to cover their lovable story. Cora the corgi was set to be a star. People had reacted so powerfully to her video, they wanted more. So Madison agreed to a few news stories on the incident. Thanks to her interviews, Madison was able to raise awareness about Cora's past. She shed some much-needed light on the problems with puppy mills. Furthermore, Madison was able to share how rescue animals are an amazing option. Cora was so lovable and had so much affection to give. It was like Cora was now the spokes-corgi for all animal rescue adoptions. Raising awareness about the topic of rescue animals is also a needed subject. and the man at the airport would agree. She knows who's hurting and she knows who needs her. This was Madison's response to how Cora had known to suss out that man. Who knew a dog who was unloved for 7.5 years would have so much love to give? The man at the airport needed Cora's touch in that time, and somehow she'd managed to find him. This was something he would never, ever forget. Madison was so moved by Cora, she shared one pic of her affection to a Facebook group, disapproving corgis. However, Cora was anything but disapproving. She showed one man that it was okay to hurt, and he would be eternally grateful. Her kind presence helped him overcome his grief, even in just that moment. "I'm blown away by her on a daily basis," Madison shared, and evidently the rest of the world was too.